Hello and welcome back to My Safety Hub, your go-to source for all things health and safety. My name's Dylan Stain and thank you for joining us for another weekly review session. Now today we've got a special episode in store for you where we're going to do some rapid fire compilations of safety hazards, fails and obviously accidents and incidents. But before we get into that, let's welcome back Occupational. Okkert, tell us, how was your week?
Hi, Dylan. No, it's been an eventful few days, but for the better. So yeah, glad to be back.
Great news, great news. As I've mentioned, we've got an exciting episode lined up in front of us. We are doing things a bit differently this time around. We are going to be doing a compilation of hazards, risks, and safety fails. So if you like this type of content, please consider leaving this video a like and dropping a comment down below on items you would like for us to review next. But that being said, let's dive into it. So obviously here we have a boom crane once again, as in previous videos. This gentleman over here thinks he's Superman. Kudos to his skills there, Oker. What do you thought about those acrobatics and that move to stop that vehicle?
Well, obviously he's lucky to get the vehicle stopped, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit of humor that we've got here. Not
Definitely.
something that I would do though.
Yeah, I don't think I've got the physical capacity to even attempt that, but that unsafe act is relatively noteworthy.
Mhm.
And his friend's like, oh, what happened?
My word.
Oh my goodness. So that guy had quite the fall there, but luckily his harness saved him. So again here we can see the importance of wearing the correct PPE. This one stood out for me the most, okay, and that is a 25,000 litre flow bin. And
Mm.
as we can see, this gentleman was rubbing down the flow bin with what seems to be a cloth, and we saw
Yeah.
that explosion. Why do you think that happened?
Friction, static
Hmm.
electricity. There could have been some residue on the outside of the bin, therefore why they're cleaning it. The connection between the electricity and the chemical itself leads to combustion. It's not something that you see very commonly because not everybody works with chemicals in this regard quite often. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it definitely can happen. That chain of events, I mean, we've just seen it. It can happen if you don't pay attention to what kind of materials you're using when you're performing these cleaning activities. Things like this can happen.
Definitely. So for me, I also thought about static discharge, and once again, this reiterates why it's so important to have a risk assessment in place and have all those hazards considered. Doesn't matter how far-fetched they might be, if it is something worth noting down, please do so on your risk assessments. Another working at heights here. Working at
Mm.
heights seems to be a very dangerous task these days, I must say. That poor fellow there is not going to have a great day ahead of them. But no support on the ladder. Again,
Well, that's just poor planning. I mean, you're on a public road,
yeah,
and put some demarcation cones out, warn the oncoming traffic of your activities, let them know. I mean, you have a driver that's not paying attention to the road,
hmm.
these things are bound to happen. It's just going to happen.
And even with the proper PPE that this person was wearing, did you see that slingshot effect that happened there? So that's definitely a concussion, some ergonomical strains that took place there, even possible fractures. So again, PPE only the last resort, guys. You must always plan the task first. PPE is not going to save you, as we can see there. Look at the size of that
Mm.
ship against that person, and now they start that ship. Can you imagine the fright that person must have gotten there? Here we just see some training. If you
Yes,
have to submerge me like that underwater without any breathing gear, hey.
that's not for everybody.
And here we're back to working at heights, scaffolding.
Or at least make sure that it's secured properly before you get up.
Yeah, and again, I think this was lack of planning here, and these guys just
Mm.
wanted to complete the job. It looks like they are building a wall of some kind, and they most probably were very hasty to complete this job. So, again, working at heights, make sure you've got your ducks in a row.
You'd be surprised how often this happens. It's usually not something that you hear about, but these types of incidents with things like angle grinders and cutters, these things happen quite often. So yeah, luckily he's wearing a face shield,
Yeah.
but you'd be surprised how often these discs can rupture and explode or just split apart and they go flying and you don't know where they're going to end up. So he's lucky in this regard.
Yeah, so in this case, PPE definitely saved him. But again, the PPE didn't restrict that the grinder disc blowing up. It just prevented the blow there. So again, PPE last resort. I've personally seen this happen with my own eyes back in the day. Very, very dangerous task if the equipment is not kept up to standard. Again with the cranes, eh?
Yeah, that's poorly loaded. Just lower your load before you move. Yeah, we've seen this happen before many times.
Yes, and as we can see here, we spoke about the balancing point of a forklift. We spoke about not jumping out of moving machinery and lowering your load when transporting goods. We've seen these types of things happen over and over again.
And it's such a basic mistake, but I mean, again, you can just see
Yeah.
how these things happen quite often. Could be poor training, or it could be, just trying to get from one point to the next as quickly as possible.
Now, this is a very informative video, and I want you guys to pay special attention to this, especially your first aiders and firefighters when you go for your training. Pay close attention to what they call a backdraft here. As you can see, they seal off the entrance of this particular corridor in this example, and the flames die out, but the smoldering hotspots of the burning debris, for this matter, is still alive. And look what happens if this is not properly maintained. So that was our fast review of a few videos over here. Any takeaway thoughts here? Anything you want to say to our viewers regarding this?
No, well, I mean, there's a range of interesting videos that we looked at today. Looking after yourself, following procedures, planning ahead, making sure that, if you're going to be moving loads on machines or lifting equipment, that you do the job right. There's a couple of takeaways here, so at least some interesting content to consider.
Definitely. And my key takeaway for these few videos is risk assessment once again is key. We can see that some of these videos are very far-fetched, and you guys watching might think, how could this even happen? How could these guys not have known some of these things? And that's the fact of the matter. Risk assessment details all those hazards, they list them, and we can look at the associated risks for them as well, and the appropriate control measures. So risk assessment, the number one item to consider before conducting any task. But thank you very much, Awkward, for your valuable insights once again. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. And then until next time, stay safe, stay inspired. Cheerio.
Yes.